Hey, what's going on, Weavers? Tim here again, back with another microcord ring video. And in this tutorial, we're using the classic Cobra knot to make a really sweet looking ring out of microcord. So if your fingers have been feeling lonely lately, this video is for you. That being said, let's get into it. So I'm going to first demonstrate this technique with a piece of 550 paracord simply because it'll be much easier to see and much more clear. So with our piece of cord in hand, I've got the midpoint doubled over up top, and with the two other ends, I'm going to run them through that midpoint and pull all the rest of the cord through, kind of like doing a cow's hitch. I'm going to turn it around and have it on my finger like so. So I have both ends coming out up top with the loop sort of facing me. At this point, you're going to have to roughly size your ring, and this part will be a little bit tricky because after you tie the first knot, it could potentially change, so you may have to play around with it a little bit. So now with both cords coming out up top, I'm going to separate the cords, put the left to the left side, right to the right. The right side cord, I'm going to lay it over top those two core strands. Take the left strand, lay it on top of the opposite strand, pass it behind the core and out the crook on the right side. So we're tying our first Cobra knot like so. And again, you'll have to be very careful when adjusting the sizing and tightness of the knot because it can and will change, especially with the microcord because it's very finicky. So we tied our first Cobra knot. And also at this point, you want to make sure that both loops are of equal size. Okay, so do your best to check the length on those. And if one is shorter than the other, you can actually adjust the length of those loops simply by pulling on one side of the cord out to the other. Okay, so you can give it a little tug if they're uneven and do your best to make sure they are perfectly even because you will run into trouble later on if you don't. So now we're going to continue tying those Cobra knots. And of course, you're just going to work with the same lead strand and tie that same Cobra knot over and over. Then from there, you're going to continue tying your Cobra knots over the core of your ring. And after I tie the second knot, I can start to kind of pull up on those knots just a little bit, just to firm them up. And from here, I'm going to start tying my Cobra knots all around the circumference of the ring. So I've tied Cobra knots all around the circumference of my ring, and I've made a full circle to the other side. So now if you wanted to make a single Cobra knot ring, you can stop here. You can, clip off the excess cord and you'll have a thinner Cobra knot ring. But if you want the thicker King Cobra ring, what we're going to do from here is continue a second pass around. Just continue to tie the second pass of Cobra knots around the first one. It'll give you a much more substantial looking ring. And from there, you just make your way around the circumference one more time. So now that we've done the demo with 550, here it is with microcord. We're going to go through it a little bit quicker because I pretty much explained how to do the technique already. But again, feed those cords through the top of the loop. Bring it around. And with microcord, you want to make sure your strands are on the proper side. It's very easy for them to get twisted over. So I've roughly sized my ring at this point. And now I'm going to start that same technique. So with the right side, I'm going to pass it over the core strands. Left goes on top and out to the other side on the right crook. Now, if you've never tied Cobra knots before and you see yourself getting this spiral pattern, it's because you're not tying the Cobra knots with the same lead strand. So if you've never done Cobra knots before, I would suggest practicing with two colors, and that'll make things a lot easier. So as you can see, it's a lot more finicky to do with microcord, like I said earlier, and you will just have to play around with it to make sure you get the right circumference because it can and will change if you're not careful, and that could mess with the final size of your ring. So now we're just going to continue tying those Cobra knots once again all around the circumference of our ring. So we've made our way once around the entire circumference and we've come full circle to the other side. And now at this point, you're just going to do the second pass, as I mentioned earlier, all the way around. Once you've done a full second pass, your ring is more or less complete. So I want to double check for sizing here, make sure it fits properly. And then from there, I'm just going to clip off my excess microcord, give it a little bit of a melt with my lighter, and press down on it with the knotter's tool as per usual. And here's just a quick look at a single Cobra ring that I did with blue microcord. Just want to give you guys an idea of what it looks like. So I just tied the one pass around, and I'm going to clip off the excess cord from there. Same process, just less cord and one pass. And that's what it looks like on the finger. And there we have it. Our microcord King Cobra ring is complete. The perfect color for me, OD green. Absolutely love the way this one turned out. So if the microcord Conquistador ring was a little bit too much for you, perhaps you can try this one out. It's a lot easier. I'd say the hardest part is getting the sizing down right, but after one or two tries, it's not too bad. As always, a huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters. If you want access to exclusive videos and other Patreon perks, feel free to check out the link to my Patreon page, link in the video as well as down below. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to check out what I have to offer on the rest of my channel.